If you work for a job and you got 9 to 5, you got nothing to worry about. Your taxes are taken out of your check and you're good. If you have a small business, you should be scared. If you're not scared right now, get scared. What's up, everybody? Today, we're going to be talking about one of the craziest things that you ever heard of, the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Doesn't that sound like such a great name? What's the Inflation Reduction Act? That sounds so wonderful. Everybody wants to get rid of inflation. Well, I'm going to talk about every detail of the Inflation Reduction Act, how it's going to affect you. First off, before we jump into this video, I wanted to ask you a question. Number one, do you believe that Joe Biden, our president of the United States, actually wrote this bill when he signed this bill? On August 16th, he signed this bill into Congress, and it sounds like such a wonderful bill. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act. So it should absolutely reduce inflation. And you know, Joe Biden wants to build back better and wants to do all this stuff. And so let's jump into this and see what's he got in store for us. How does it affect small businesses? And what's this bill really all about? Comment below if you believe that this bill was written by Joe Biden and if this bill is good for you. All right, so what's this bill all about? Let's jump into it. So on August 16th, Biden officially signed the Inflation Reduction Act. He's put his John Hancock on the bill. It passed by Congress, 220 to 207 votes. Majority of the people in Congress said this is good for the people. This is good for our constituents. This is what we're going to sign into law. Let's go into the details of what this bill is truly all about. Just like any Inflation Reduction Act, it's designed to curb climate issues, right? It's designed at aiming climate change. So why wouldn't you call it the Inflation Reduction Act if it's the Climate Change Act, right? Because the whole part, and this is kind of going a little bit off topic, but the whole point of salesmanship is to call something what it's not. Call people what they're going to vote for, because most people aren't reading what they voted for anyway. So call it something nice and put something else in there, right? That's what they're doing. Curbing climate change, aim to improve healthcare by lowering prescription drug costs and by raising taxes to billion-dollar corporations and cut the deficit, right? This is what this is all about. And one of the things it's all about is reducing the carbon footprint of the United States by 40%. By doing this, by 2030, they're going to reduce the carbon footprint of the United States by 40%. If the US has like a zero emission, like we produce no carbon footprint, we got nothing, does that affect the world's economy, right? Does that affect the world's footprint if China's pumping out all this pollutions into the air, if Mexico's pumping out all these pollutions into the air, and we're this little tranquil piece? Is that going to save the United States? No, it's not. When it comes to government, when it comes to big business, it's really follow the money. So that's what we're going to jump into right now. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to impose a 15% corporate alternative minimum tax aimed towards rich corporations. They're the ones that are taking the brunt of this, right? No, it's aimed at you. If you own a small business, it's aimed at you. If you own a business that you don't work for an employer, it's aimed at you. If you are self-employed, it's aimed at you. Why? Because they hired 67,000 new IRS agents. Let's go backwards. Do you believe that you should pay taxes? Because the 16th Amendment passed in 1909 allowed them to put a federal income tax. And so now, just like anything, control and government control never goes away. Now you're seeing when you're going into a different country, they're gathering data for big businesses. They're gathering data for this. They're gathering data for that. Like I just got back from a trip to Mexico and they're like, due to COVID, right? You don't have to wear any face masks anymore. You don't have to do anything like that anymore. But due to COVID, we need to gather all this information about you. No, it's not due to COVID. They're saying it's due to COVID, just like they're saying this is the Inflation Reduction Act, and they're talking about a carbon footprint, and they're talking about all this other stuff that really doesn't matter, because the idea is that they're just trying to get more of your money. That's what they're trying to do. And then corporations have been able to shrink their tax burden as far as low as 21%. So it also allowed them to spend $80 billion on boosting the IRS tax enforcement and tax compliance. What does that mean? They're literally hiring a SWAT team for businesses. The IRS is not like your friends. They are there to audit you. I've been audited. I was audited in 2007. It's a scary experience, but they are literally going to go through. He has literally armed Congress with a bunch of money to go and hire a SWAT team to go and extort businesses and find money. Because we all know that, like, no matter what they say, and I just had this happen the other day. Literally, I got a ticket for talking on my speakerphone on my cell phone while I was driving, right? So I got the ticket. It was in Las Vegas. All of a sudden, I'm talking to my assistant, like, did you take care of that? Did you take care of that? She's like, yeah, nobody's getting back to me. All of a sudden, I get a piece of mail. I've got a bench warrant, right? What does that mean? I got a warrant for my arrest, which means that literally if I got pulled over by the cops in Las Vegas, they could take me to jail because I didn't pay my ticket. And you might say, well, that's a good finishing punishment. Troy, you should definitely go to jail for talking on your cell phone. You know, you should know better. And, you know, if your phone's on speakerphone and you get pulled over by the police, you should definitely go to jail if you don't pay your ticket. And my whole point is, when you make something criminal, you see, like, oh my gosh, this is a criminal behavior. Like, we had an issue where the state of Nevada came into my business and they're like, who's this person? Who's this person? Who's this person? That's my gal. She's a transaction coordinator. She works for a bunch of agents. She works for me. They're like, no, she's an employee. She should be paid as an employee. I'm like, okay. They're like, stop work order. You cannot work any longer until this happens. And by the way, that's a criminal offense. I'm like, it's a criminal offense to make a mistake in business? Yeah, it's a criminal offense. So what you need to understand is that big government is not your friend. And when you arm them with IRS tax agents and you do all that stuff, that's scary stuff, especially for guys like me who have their own business. And I'm not worried about tax consequences or tax this or tax that. I pay my taxes. You know, we obviously try to eliminate and reduce our taxes all the time. That's what you do when you're in business. But the reality is, when you go and put 67,000 IRS tax agents on the ground and you tell them, go hustle up some money, it's the same as them telling the police force in Nevada, go issue people tickets all over the place. It's not about public safety. It's not about serving the public. It's literally dollars and cents, right? This is not an Inflation Reduction Act. The only thing that they're trying to do is they're like, hey, we overspent. The government overspent here. The only way to reduce the deficit, which they'll never do, the only way to reduce this, to reduce that, is to go get money from people who have small businesses who don't know what they're doing entirely, and they may have not checked the right box. And you can come in there trained as an IRS agent, find something wrong with them and whack them for some money, whack them over the head, whack them this way, whack them that way. And they're going to pay because they're scared. They don't want to get in trouble. And the IRS is going to tell you, you can ask Wesley Snipes. You know, he's in jail for evading IRS. They got no problem putting you in jail. They used to call it debtors' prisons back in the day. Like, if you owed money, they'd throw you in jail. So we're going back that way. I know we're a civilized country, but we're going back to the way of, like, hey, you're going to be in prison if you don't pay that. And one thing that you should pay attention to, I know if you're a crypto guy, if you're a digital currency guy, is, you know, this is not about, like, digital currency, like, for the point of having good digital currency. It is about control and transparency. And so if you are like I'm a big crypto guy, I love crypto, I'm like, that's great, you know, that's a fantastic, even though that stuff is artificial and nobody cares about it, it's going to become real once the government gets its hands in it. And then what's going to happen is, if once they outlaw cash or they eliminate cash or they do whatever, then they're going to be able to track everything that you do, every transaction. I mean, this already happened with Biden's, like, on PayPal, anything over $600, you're going to have to report it with income. Like, they are not messing around. They want every dollar that you have and then some. They want to take a bite out of it, right? Why do they want your money? Because they just made a bunch of money up out of the air, right? They just made all this money up, and that's why the economy went through the roof. Why? During COVID, when everybody's stuck at home, nobody I know who's got a business can hire anybody to work for them. I just talked to the guy next door who owns Tio Collie. He's a friend of mine. Talked to him. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? He's like, man, it's so hard. Nobody wants to work. Every business owner that I talk to cannot find employees to work. So we are becoming like a communist country. Like, as I sit here and stand here and I'm talking to you, we are literally becoming a communist country, because the idea of a communist country is literally like, we're funded by the state. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't make any money, right? Like, that's Cuba, that's China, that's this, that's that, the other thing. And, like, you know what? There's a lot of control that comes from being a communist country. Like, as China, if you control your people, you control your workforce, and, like, you control their money, like, you can get them to do a lot of hard stuff. It's not about being a patriot. It's not about being this. It's about literally dollars and cents. And they believe from this, even though this bill only cost $207 million, they believe they'll actually raise $124 billion in taxes. So let's break that out. Like, how many people are in the United States? There's 330 million. We'll just say half of them are tax-paying citizens. So let's just go with 120 20 million, right? Let's just throw that number out there. So if we take 120 million, this is kind of the fun stuff to do. So you take 124 billion dollars, right? 124 billion, that's my calculator won't even do that. Hold on. What I'm trying to figure out, guys, is I'm trying to figure out like how much money per citizen is that? So that's basically a $1,100 if they taxed everybody, $1,100 per person, right? So really what's going to happen is you've got 67,000 IRS agents doing the Inflation Reduction Act, which means that I should be really careful about what I say on this freaking video, because who knows, they're going to probably target me. I mean, that's scary to even talk about this stuff when they're weaponizing the IRS. They're literally going to have 67,000 IRS agents out there auditing everybody. If you think that that's a great idea and you would support that law, comment below. If you don't think it's a good idea and you think that like, wow, that's scary stuff, comment below. I would really like to know. For me as a business owner, it just means that more than likely we're probably going to be audited, and thank goodness we have great bookkeeping. But you know, it doesn't matter like if you got great bookkeeping. As you know, the IRS is law enforcement. Any law enforcement that comes and pulls you over on your vehicle, they can find something wrong if they want to. If they audit you as a business and they find something wrong, they're going to tax you for it. It's impossible to know all the IRS laws because there's 6,000 pages and some odd pages in the IRS tax code. So if you're in business right now, button up. You are about ready to be dealing with the IRS. It's 87,000. I've been saying 67,000. It's 87,000 IRS agents. I'm sorry. There are 87,000 IRS agents hired. Let's just add, what do you think the average salary of an IRS agent is? I'm guessing it's at least $100,000. So we times that by $100,000. Yeah, almost like $9 billion. So we're spending $9 billion to go and get 124 billion. It's a really good investment if you look at it from a business standpoint. Like, we're going to spend $9 billion to go get 124 billion. I would do that if I was a business. And the government is a business, right? So they got 87,000 new IRS agents. Not all of them are on the enforcement side. So the enforcement, you need to know what that word means. It means law enforcement. It means that they will arrest you. They will take you to jail. You will be penalized. You will pay. And if you have a problem, good luck. The other thing that they're doing is they're also added an excise tax on stock buybacks. That is projected to bring in another $74 billion, right? Good job there. One thing I want to talk about to you is, will this reduce inflation? Do you believe, as you're watching this video right now, that this is the way to reduce inflation? Or do you think reducing spending by stop printing money and getting people back to work will reduce inflation? My thinking is that, wow, we got a spending problem, right? As a business owner, you know, like, I'm spending too much money right now. That is something that you go back and you're like, okay, I got to fire this guy. 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 I redo this and we got to bring in more revenue, right? Whatever the situation is. IRS has infinite amounts of money because they're owned by the federal government, and they've just hired 87,000 people like blink like that. Who came up with that number? You're literally saying, all right, well, we need about this many people. Now you've got 87,000 people working for the IRS, and their job is to shake you upside down and empty out your pocketbooks. I wanted to let you know is, like, you know, one thing that we did in our research here is that we noticed that the Penn-Wharton budget model predicts that it will slightly increase inflation until 2024, and then it decreases afterwards. So that's what they said. How will it affect you, right? How does it affect you and me right now? There will be substantial tax credit to help transition to clean energy, rebates for people who buy electric vehicles, who put solar panels on their house, who make all kinds of energy efficient enhancing improvements to their home, faster tax refunds on low cost prescription medications. And listen, if you're out there right now, why would you believe any of this, right? Like, why would you believe that they're going to lower the cost of prescription drugs? They're not gonna. It's not going to happen. Just like this bill is not going to reduce inflation. Like, we know a couple things here in the United States. Number one, we got a problem with drugs, right? We got a problem with pharmaceutical corporations. We got a problem with drug corporations. And here's the bigger problem. Most of these bills are not written by the politicians who actually present them and sign them. They're written by a corporation, a bunch of attorneys, and a bunch of people who have interest, I would guess on this one, it might be somebody in the electrical car business. It might be somebody in that sort of realm because there's a lot of talk about that. One of the things that I would challenge any of you guys to answer, and I certainly can't answer this question myself, I've certainly heard a lot of theories on it, but is like, did you realize that actually making a battery has more of a carbon footprint than putting gasoline in your vehicle? Like they say, actually manufacturing, bringing up the LED or bringing up whatever goes into that battery out of the earth and then shipping that from China or shipping that from this country to that country actually causes more damage to the environment than putting that fuel in that vehicle and then spitting out that carbon monoxide into the air. I think everybody out there, yourself included, nobody wants to see us rot away and kill our planet. Nobody wants to see that. We want to preserve our planet. We want to plant trees. And we know that if we plant trees, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint, right? So my goal would be, you know what, let's do, less building. Let's focus on planting trees and let's focus on, reducing like unnecessary things, but to force everybody to say you're driving an electric vehicle. If you don't like it, too bad, you're driving an electric vehicle. Eventually, if they control everything, right? They control the solar panels, they control the electric vehicles. God, it sounds like Elon Musk might be behind this bill. Basically, here's my opinion. I pray to God that this bill does not affect you. I pray that you don't have like any sort of issues with your business. Obviously make sure that your books are tight, make sure that you're checking the right boxes, make sure that you're paying your taxes. Don't be a tax sheet. Don't be any sort of way like that where you can have any problems. But what I really hope is that you understand how extremely important it is that the people that you elect do what they say and say what they do. Because a lot of people are big on talking points and telling you what you want to hear and then doing the exact opposite. And the Inflation Reduction Act does not do anything other than weaponize the IRS to go and shake down businesses, right? Because they're not shaking down you. If you work for a job and you got 9 to 5, you got nothing to worry about. Your taxes are taken out of your check and you're good, right? Unless you have a small business, you're okay. If you have a small business, you should be scared. If you're not scared right now, get scared. Make sure your books are tight. Make sure you got a good account. Make sure you got good bookkeeping, and make sure that you are prepared to get audited because you're more than likely going to get audited. They hired 87,000 IRS agents and they're probably going to audit. They probably got a quota, right? They're not coming to you and be like, yeah, just audit guys who are bad. They're going to say audit everybody, right? Find what you could find. Go find money, guys. We just blew a crap ton of money. We just had a party. You guys got to go find some money to pay for it. My opinion is, for what it's worth, is like we're heading the wrong direction in the United States. I felt that way for years. We're not headed the way that I grew up, the way that I believed in, the patriotic way. I was like, hey, it's America. We're great. Like I talked to these guys that were from Mexico the other day and they're actually painting my house right now. I'm like, where are you guys from? They're like, Jalisco, De donde eres? They're like, Jalisco. I'm like, oh man, that's one of my favorite places. How do you like the United States? They're like, it's okay. I'm like, is it good for money? They're like, it's great for money, but there's no freedom. I'm like, what do you mean? We have more freedom in Mexico and we make less money. So my question to you is it more important to have your freedom or is it more important to have money? Because if the cost of money is freedom, then I want freedom, not money. And my question to you is like, are you voting? Are you paying attention to who you vote for? And are you watching what bills they pass? We have 220 people that stood up and said, yes, this is a good idea. Yes. And I bet you 220 of those people did not read this bill. They got the bullet points prior to the deal. They're like, yes, I got my talking points. I got my this, I got my that, I got my other thing. And you could watch this all the time. They're all saying the same things. They all fall in line with party politics and nobody stands out from the crowd. Share this video if you like it. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you comment on this video and make sure that you pay attention to what you're doing. And if you're scared in business, you have the right to be, but don't be, because you know what? Everything's a learning lesson. When I got audited in 2007, I am thankful that happened. Why? Because I know right now my books are tight and we have great accounting. And my accountant always tells me, if you haven't watched our podcast with Mark Sherman, make sure you check it out. My accountant always tells me, you're only as good as your last audit. Be prepared because it's coming your way. And if you're in a small business, you better be prepared for it. We'll check you on the next one. Peace.